Yes, yes, you are. You are tuned into the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. And we're streaming on Rumble. We're streaming on X. We're streaming on YouTube. We're streaming at WYAB.com. So you know it. We're the 50,000 watt blowtorch that is WYAB. If you can't pick up the signal, hit us up on the stream. And also, I'd appreciate a follow on X. It's just absolutely wild world out there. Great place to get information is on X. Got to double check everything, of course, but you can follow me, Andrew Gosser, AndrewGasser. The number is 601-879-0002. The text line is open. Got a couple spicy ones already. 601-879-5060. Today is Wednesday, the 4th of February, the day after the day that bills die. And our mission here at the Andrew Gosser Show has not changed. It is standard. We're here to equip the saints. Who are the saints? Y'all are the saints. Yep. And normally, I try to put out something gentle, kind, inspiring. But some of y'all out there just need to hear this. So, and if this hits you, it's probably because you needed to hear it. First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you can see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And my goodness gracious, if those words were never more true today, um, we'll find out here shortly. But we got to start off in Madison. Breaking news on the Clay Edwards Show. Elementary school in Madison evacuates after receiving bomb threat. And everybody knows about this by now. Hopefully, kids are being picked up. I know in the several group chats that I'm in, we knew several people who had their kids there, and they're going to pick it up. And shout out to Madison first responders out there, being out there quickly and diligently. Apparently, and I haven't heard, I've only heard this reported in group chat and secondhand, but there was a rather alarming voice PA announcement at the school, and people were led through the forest to get away from the school. Terrible, absolutely terrible. And I just want to read the Madison County Schools evacuation notice, and this is coming from Facebook. School evacuation, and while this comes from Facebook, I'm reading this off the WLBT website. So thank you to LBT for actually posting this. And you'll see why I'm going to read this, and we'll take it from there. This morning, a threat was called into the Madison Station Elementary School. Law enforcement and first responders are on campus and processing the scene. Students and staff are being relocated to the Ridgecrest Church, 7469 Old Canton Road, Madison, Mississippi, 39110. Parents or emergency contacts are asked to come to Ridgecrest to reunite with their student. Parents and emergency contacts must bring a photo ID, as we can only release students to those in the contact list who present a proper ID, no exceptions. This is a great policy. Last thing you want is a gaggle of kids just getting picked up. Next thing you know, ends up missing in this scary situation. And I've never been at a school bomb threat, but I have been under threat before, and it's not fun. The anxiety level is real, people. I can't imagine what it'd be like driving to a school, wanting to pick up your kid, knowing that a serious, incredible threat has been called in. Oh, as a parent, that's the greatest title I'll ever have. It won't be radio talk show host or county board supervisor or highway commissioner, captain, chief of training and development, whatever accolades I've accomplished, accumulated, electoral college voter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The one I'm most proud of is dad, father, nicknamed Dadasaur. Yep, that's the best. And if you're a mother, if you are a woman, that is the greatest title you will ever have. And when you're a parent, it just hits different. So we're grateful and thankful to the church for opening up their campus to allow to reunite the families. We're grateful and thankful to Madison first responders and police, law enforcement, and I'm sure the FBI and bomb squad will soon be called in. No doubt we'll have the canine troops on patrol trying to sniff out, see what's happened. And unlike what's happening in Minneapolis with all the cell phone tracking, I'm quite certain that cell phone records and phone records will be recorded, and we will hear about some of this here sooner rather than later. But did you hear the important thing right there? And I know we've got school choice and all this other craziness to talk about, and we'll get there. But I really want to stress this because it's an important part of our lives as Americans. Show proper ID to pick up your kid. That only makes sense. You know, you can't go to pick up I mean, think about the aunties and uncles who aren't on the, emergency contact list. I bet you there's gonna be a lot of parents out there updating that tomorrow when school opens again. Uncle Joe wasn't on there. Auntie Liz wasn't on there. Uncle Roger well, we don't want Uncle Roger on the list. But in all seriousness, I mean, these things are important, and showing an ID, whether to be pick up your kid and drive, that's important. But what else do we want ID on? Can you we just talked about this the other day.
Take a look here. Favorite photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of Black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial in this country. A photo ID to vote is not controversial in this country. It is not controversial by party, and it is not controversial by race. The vast majority of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj that, in fact, you should have a photo ID to be able to vote. So,
And we'll just leave it right there. When I heard Clay reading that, I was driving up 49 to get to the station this morning. It's rare that I get to be on the radio 3 days a week with Clay, but this week was a special exception. With everything happening at the Capitol, we got to talk about it for 3 days. Pretty cool. If we need a photo ID to do everything else in life, why don't we need a photo ID to vote? And y people are complaining that President Trump is talking about maybe nationalizing the elections. I think I would have worded that a little bit differently. I think we need to imply the 14th Amendment that some states are harming other states by their lack of photo ID. We've talked about it on the show, but in the past, all the states that Kamala won, Minneapolis or Minnesota, Illinois, New York, Oregon, not Wisconsin, but Washington, California, no voter ID. We are in a weird, weird situation in America, and it kind of rolls into what we're really gonna talk about on the show today. It is the death of HB2 in the Senate, and Kingfish said that I wasn't really talking about the same things. It's really apples and oranges between the Mississippi Senate and the U.S. Senate, and I'll give them some parts of that, but they still act completely different, at least in my opinion, in the interactions I've had with Mississippi state senators compared to Mississippi state reps. And it's not a bad thing. I'm just saying it's the culture. It is what it is. And the amount of anger and the amount of vitriol, the amount of just red on red hate, for lack of better word. I mean, Republicans are really upset at other Republicans. And I guess the best place to start is I always like using local news sources for this, and I'm going to Frank Corder over at the Magnolia Tribune. Governor Reeves rips Hoseman DeBar as being Democrat aligned, opposed to conservatives. Ladies and gentlemen, today is Wednesday, the 4th of February, 2026. The time is 10:16, 47 seconds in the morning. And I just want to mark this headline. Governor Reeves rips Hoseman DeBar as being Democrat aligned, opposed to conservatives. We're just going to let that one percolate for a little while. I've never been more disappointed in elected officials than I am this morning, Reeve said to the lieutenant governor and Senate election chairman or education chairman. He added that the Senate Education Committee is where conservative priorities go to die. I've been saying that in the Senate for so long, and I haven't even read the story before this. I know I see Frank Corder write something, and I'm like, I know I can roll with that. And where Democrat philosophy still dominates. Frank Corder, remember this. It is the 4th of February, 2026 at 10:17 in the morning, and where Democrat philosophy still dominates. We'll timestamp that for a little bit, because Frank Corder is not wrong, and and the governor isn't wrong. There are things that are playing inside our local Mississippi Republican Party that we all know stinks. We can't put our finger on it necessarily. We can always point our finger at somebody and say, "Oh, this person's this, that, and the other thing." But we've never really put our finger on it and stomped it a mud hole in it and walked it dry per se. And a lot of Republicans now are firing on other Republicans, and this is exactly what the Democrats want. I'm telling you right now, if I am a Democrat strategist, and I'd be a good one too, because I'd sit there and poke holes in all their arguments and make a lot of money. But if I were the Democrats, I'd be like, everybody, just shut up. Let the Republicans have their infighting. You know, we in Mississippi here, we've got vice chairs in the Senate. We've got chairs in the Senate. We've got everything working great. We've got Governor Reeves, popular governor, taking on a popular lieutenant governor, Delbert Hosemann, and a lot of you right now are saying, "Delbert's not popular." Oh, Delbert's popular. And for someone who if he's not popular, he sure knows how to pull in the money. Yep. Reeves said, "In his 23 years of public office, I've never been more disappointed in elected officials than I am this morning in Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann and Senator Dennis DeBar." Man, have I just sit here and think about all the things that I had to try to get done with other people, like-minded Republicans, and we didn't agree every time, and I can't imagine imagine acting this way. Granted, the last time I was actually elected as a legislator was 2017, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, shots fired from the governor. Shots fired from the governor. It gets on. He goes on. He says, "They killed a Republican legislative priority shared by conservatives all across this country, and they worked closely with the Democrats to do it," the governor wrote. "Even worse, they tried to do it in the dark and hide it from Mississippi conservatives on deadline day." I don't think there's any hiding, uh, education freedom, parental freedom for education in Mississippi, unless you had your head under a rock. Kim Wade talked about it, Clay Edwards talked about it, Lindsey Beckham talked about it, Sean Yurkaron talked about it, Andrew Gosser talked about it, Magnolia Tribune talked about it, WLBT talked about it, Mississippi Today, Mississippi Free Press, everybody was talking about it. There was no hiding this up. This is there was no evil conspicuous plan. This is what the Senate does. This is what the Senate does. And if you think that HB2 was the only thing that died yesterday, you would be wrong. Many bills did. And there's so much more to this. The Senate already has bills that cover a lot of what was killed in HB2. Is it a blow to Speaker Jason White and the governor? Absolutely. Are they going to get some of what they want? Yes. Are they going to get everything they want? No. And that's unfortunately how politics works in America today. You don't get all of what you want. Every once in a while, you'll get the whole kit caboodle burrito, but that is so rare and far and in between. Deals are made, and like, I had a county supervisor that I was friends with, and she goes, "Andy, if you are sitting there making a cake and you go to the bathroom and don't wash your hands, and then you continue making that cake, and then you bake that cake, is it gonna kill the bacteria that was on your hands?" I'm like, "Yes." She goes, "But do you still wanna eat that cake?" "No." And that's kinda like what HB2 is, baking a cake with some dirty hands. There's a lot more to this, but I gotta take my first commercial break. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. We're gonna take a quick commercial break. Oh, yeah. Woohoo. We're back at the Andrew Gosser Show. We're talking HB2. You know, there's some events going on around town. We always like to talk about good places to go. And only once a month can you go meet fellow Republicans out and about in Madison. And that's at Mama Hamill's today from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. And with HB2 falling and dying in the Senate today, if that might be a good place to go out there and talk to some people and connect. You know, that's one of the major goals of this show is to empower you, the listener, to have more influence and more power inside the local political system. You know, yesterday I shared an app, uh, ECM legislative roster, and we put it out there. And so many of you, I got over 15 texts talking about how you either emailed or called your local representative or senator on whatever issue it was. Because yesterday, thousands of bills died. Thousands of campaign promises fell. Oh, we're going to pass a bill. If you were smart, you say, I'm going to introduce a bill. I'm not saying it's going to get voted on or even get out of committee, but that's what we're going to do. And you know, I want to finish up this HB2 stuff, but there were other really great bills that made it through and some that didn't. Frank Corder isn't the only one who was talking about HB2. Um, you know, the 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 owner and operator of Magnolia Tribune also had some really strong words about it in his Facebook page, and of course, just as I go to click it, it crashes out. But that's okay because that just goes to show you that good conservatives can disagree on stuff. And just because I don't agree with you on HB2 doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that I'm a bad guy. It doesn't mean that we still can't go out and work on similar issues together. And we get opinions like this: Mississippi Senate betrays families. Corey DeAngelis. Mississippi families can't wait another year while politicians dither, and Senate Republicans who side with the radical left to block this education freedom must be held accountable at the ballot box. Do you know what this sounds like to me? Operation Mockingbird, mass formation psychosis. It doesn't even matter what the issue is, it's just Republicans bad. Minneapolis, Republicans bad. Philadelphia, Republicans bad. California, Republicans bad. Our own side is saying it. Do we not see this? Do we not see this? We are the experts at pulling victory out of the jaws of defeat. And we are the experts of just screwing it all up. Instead of saying we've got HB2 passed in the House and we've got a bill in the Senate where we can go ahead and see what works together and come together and work together. Nah, man, we're firing shots. We're not even firing shots. We're using artillery. I won't say we're using airstrikes yet because that's when we're down to serious business, like the Marine Corps F-35C that shot down an Iranian drone yesterday. That was serious business. This is almost like kids in a lunch cafeteria having a food fight and everybody posting up to make sure that they get their comments on the record, which is important. As a recovering politician, you have to have your comments on the record. I was for school choice or I was against school choice. You know, I was for it. I want parents to have that decision, but I'm also of the opinion that it's important that residents take a more active role in what's going on their school boards, which in Mississippi, school boards are nothing more than country clubs, social gatherings held at odd times. And if you're not active in your local, I mean, it's like our culture has just turned away from clicking and swiping from actually going to old meetings, whether that be Kiwanis Clubs meetings, Lions Clubs meetings, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, dare I say church. All those things are now in the past. American Legion, AMVETS, all those organizations, all those institutions that made America awesome and made America great are collapsing because we're not engaged with that anymore. We're engaged in other things. Tinder and Snapchat and X and whatever else it is. You can spend hours and hours consuming stuff that is absolutely bad for you. It's dead food, as my brother X would say. It's dead food. It's dead food blood. You're sitting there eating sugar and candy and ice cream. Meanwhile, the enemy, man, he's eating high protein, low fat, little bit of carb, getting cut, getting ready to go to battle. And I know we've all seen the meme of just the obese kid dressed up like a super soldier, getting ready to go to SEAL Team 6, guns and Navarone, decked out, ready, Call of Duty, porting for duty, sir. He's gonna jump off that helicopter, sprain his knee, and limp to the medic station before we even get into combat. That's how that's how I feel the Republicans are right now. I don't like the Republican on Republican violence, and this is coming from somebody who learned the hard way. Andy, you're being a hypocrite. You hypocrite. That Bible verse you read, you're talking about yourself. Yes, I did pull the plank from my eye, and I do not want the same mistakes to happen in Mississippi that happened in Illinois. And this is, I mean, I know I'm using names that probably none of you really ever heard of, but Mike Madigan and JB Pritzker couldn't be happier. They're like they're eating themselves. I don't need to. Are there things that need to be done for education reform and education freedom? Yep. But this stuff that's going on right now, I do want to quote Speaker White here because I do believe Speaker White's heart was in the best place on this. I think he did have some good ideas. Speaker Jason White, the primary sponsor of HB2, echoed the sentiment slamming the Senate for putting systems over students. The Senate has chosen the route to shut down any productive pathway to put students before systems, White said. He didn't stop there, exposing the unholy alliance at play. Senate leadership aligned themselves with the ACLU, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and the Mississippi Democratic Party, and the status quo. And there is some truth to that. But there's also some truth that there's a lot of stuff that's in HB2 in Senate Bill 2002, and if you don't know where to look it up, that app that I put out yesterday is a great place to start. When we get back, there's some other bills I wanna talk about, but I think this one has been pretty much stomped to death. We've kicked the dead horse enough. HB2 is dead in the Senate. Film at 11. Yeah, Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB, moving and grooving. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, sometimes it's just a setback. And this is the first time, the first year in Mississippi where I've really tried to learn and understand how the legislative process works. Every state is different. It's different than the national system. There's different quirks, little things that you need to know. It's what makes our representative republic unique. We have 50 individual experiments in representative republic, and Mississippi just happens to be the best one, in my opinion. We've got all sorts of good stuff, but that doesn't mean that we don't have little things that we have to work on. And one of the things that really motivated me personally and why I really decided to get involved in some of these issues was what happened in Texas. Texas is considered to be the most independent state in the union. It's my understanding that Texas is the only state flag that can fly at the same height as America. It's an independent republic inside the United States. And they are being infiltrated with Islamic courts, Sharia law, and they are having a heck of a time stomping it out. There's no room for that here in the United States, Texas, let alone Mississippi. And I know that we in Mississippi, we like to move slow. That's just the Mississippi way, and it's beautiful. But I'm also sure we know that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And unfortunately, for places like Minneapolis, Minnesota, and in Texas, they're not using the ounce of prevention. They're having to go to the pound of cure option. And it's not just going to be a pound of cure. You're going to be talking about tons of cure. And, I worked with 2 state reps on Sharia law, actually 3. And I just kind of want to go through it a little bit because even though the bills died yesterday in the House Judiciary A, I'm not angry at anybody who voted against it. I'm not angry or disappointed in the people who supported it and just didn't get the ability to have it pass. What I'm really excited about, number 1, is that there were actually 5 bills filed. The first person I talked to about this, and just being full up, was State Representative Clay Mansell out of Clinton. And he had his bill, which, dealt with divorce, and I'm gonna read it right here. Prohibited the application of Sharia divorce and child custody. That was HB 1417. It says died in committee. And if I click on it, I don't know if it has a roll call vote or anything, but Clay did a great job. He had co-sponsors, Dan Eubanks and Jill Ford, on it. So thank you to Dan Eubanks, thank you to Jill Ford, thank you to Clay Mansell. The second person that I personally reached out to via Clay Edwards was Clay put me in touch with Fred Shanks, HB 966, Sharia law prohibit and revise enhanced penalties to include acts of terroristic threats, intimidation. Fred Shanks is not afraid to go ahead and say what needs to be said and spend his political capital. I was grateful for that. HB 11 died in committee by State Representative Arnold. Sharia law prohibit the application in divorce and child custody cases, much like Clay Mansell. I don't know if they kind of mimicked each other or how that goes, but I'll get to that here in a minute. You see a little bit of duplication. And then State Representative Jill Ford, HB 604, Mississippi Supremacy Clause, to create and prohibit the enforcement of Sharia law. And there's actually one more. Oh my goodness. Sharia law prohibit the use of in contracts and in Mississippi law, by Representative Ladner. All referred to Judiciary A, all died. And, if I'm being truthful about this, it all those state reps get the credit for getting it introduced and going down the right road. But I have to say, when it comes to the failure, it's not that the state reps didn't do what they needed to do. It's on all of us. And quite frankly, it's on me. I could have used my platform so much better to talk about this. I could have made done more emails, more phone calls. I could have been much more overt. I could have called up Brother Rick up north. I could have called up Brother Rob up north and Brother Dan down south. Could have called Colonel Madness. I could have called all sorts of people, all sorts of friends. I got friends all over the state. Did I do that? Nope. And we have to look at our when things go good, everybody else gets the credit. The leader never takes credit for it. And I'm not saying I'm the leader of it, but as far as I know, the only other person who had ever had a anti-Sharia law was State Representative Becky Curry. She's been trying to do this since, I believe, 2017. And if you don't think we need it, go talk to State Representative Becky Curry and the OBGYNs who have to deal with Sharia law. Oh, yes, ladies. Guys, we talk about circumcision and we all kind of get the, ladies, there's female circumcision too. And it is so brutal. It is so unnatural. It is so unholy. And you have OBGYNs right here in Mississippi having to deal with it. And we can't get an anti-Sharia law bill through the Mississippi House and through the Senate. It's not the senator's fault. It's not the representative's fault. It's those of us who live here who realized this was a problem and didn't effectively communicate. We didn't effectively communicate, and it makes me sad. But there's a lot of great stuff too. A lot of 2A people ended up downloading the app, and we're talking about I guess there was a silencer bill that was going through, and we're able to correct that. And it's my hope that all of you who hold on just one second. It is my hope that all of you who did reach out to those state reps and those state senators start forming permanent relationships. Not that you're going to take them to lunch or be buddies with them or go play a round of golf. Maybe you will. I don't know. But it's so much easier to be able to call up people that you have a relationship with and be able to try to convince them of your point of view. I didn't even realize it was in Judiciary A until Brother Fred told me about that. And what's it say about me? Someone who has had a lot of experience in national politics, who considers himself politically inclined, who helps get people on the executive committee, does things locally. There's so much to learn. There's so much to do, and there's no way that one person can do it all. Even the governor, even the lieutenant governor, even the speaker, they're dependent on people beneath them, above them, to lead the way and point out the direction that we need to go. Whether that be with 2A issues, whether that be with healthcare issues, whether that be with education issues or law issues, not necessarily education freedom or Sharia law or silencers or medical freedom, whether that be medical marijuana or how we fund our hospitals in the rural areas of Mississippi. It takes so much more, and we are so not focused on doing those things. We are so focused on cake pop demon hunters. and we're so focused on our cooking shows or our sports teams, even LSU. Yeah, LSU. And I'm guilty of that. So I'm sitting here trying to take the plank out of my own eye so that we can work on all of us together as a team because, you know, the battle over HB2 is dead in that respect, but there's lots of that stuff that can be imported into the Senate bill and brought back to the House for a vote in conference, just like they do in every state and nationally. There's a lot of opportunity to get some of what we want done this year. If something really bad happened, I'm sure that Sharia law stuff could be imported into another bill. There's all sorts of ways to do that. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but today is a day I realize a lot of people are upset and need to be heard and get put on the record. I get it. But for me, I'm always trying to think to the positive, trying to be a Barnabas, not a Jeremiah. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. We will be right back. Yeah. Welcome back to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. You know, the leftist lunatics out there, they're the ones who defund the police. Black Life Matters. Got to get rid of the police. Talk about the most stupid thing. You've got people who've got years under their belt, educated, uneducated, doesn't matter. They've got common sense. It was the most stupid thing that the liberal Democrats have ever perpetrated upon the American public, especially in the black community. There's this anti-police sentiment. It's cultural. Doesn't make it any more wrong, less wrong because it's cultural. I'm glad I support police. Many of you know I live in Terry, and this came up on WLBT, and I want to give the police some credit. Terry police officers honored for saving teen from jumping from bridge. Yep. 2 off-duty police officers, not even on duty. 2 Terry off-duty police officers were recognized Tuesday night for saving a 16-year-old girl from jumping off a bridge near I-55. Police Chief Anthony Moore. By the way, Chief Moore, you don't remember me, but I remember you. And you and your officer were squared away helping me out, retrieving, this is just silly stuff, but I paid for gas there at the Shell station, and I left my wallet, and they took my wallet into custody, and off it went, and I had to go get it. And that's my only real interaction with Terry police. But they're always there patrolling. They're good people over there. They care about Terry. And this is commonplace. This isn't just only applicable to small town police officers. Jackson PD would do the same thing. CID would do the same thing. Madison would do the same thing. Brandon, Pearl, off-duty police officers are amazing people, and they take so much crap because the mainstream media feeding this negative line over and over again. Yes, off-duty ICE and Border Patrol would do the exact same thing, even if you did have blue hair and a nose ring. Police Chief Anthony Moore presented plaques to officers Jeffrey Dotson and Judith Whittle during the town's board meeting. Whittle was absent from the ceremony. I don't know why she wasn't there, but I think that's really awesome and special that we here honor and recognize those police officers who go above and beyond the call of duty. You know, she was. This is the testimony from Dotson. As I approached the young lady, I talked to her and just told her to look at me. You don't want to do this. We love you and we care about you. I've never met you before, Dotson said. I told her I have kids and I have grandkids and I don't want to see you jump. And these police officers have to live with a lot of regret, a lot of images that no human should ever have to look at. And they go out there and they do it daily. Just because they're off duty doesn't mean that they can't be called into action. Much like most of us, I'd like to think that most of us, if we saw something like that happening on a bridge, we'd try to do something to make that situation end in a positive note. Just like these 2 police officers from Terry, Mississippi. Good on you. That's the first hour. We'll be back in about 7 minutes. Yes, yes, you are. You are tuned into the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. We are the 50,000 watt blowtorch that rockets across Mississippi. And we are streaming on Rumble. And we are streaming on X. And we are streaming at YouTube. And we are streaming at WYAB.com. So if you can't pick up the signal, hit us up on the stream. We'd appreciate that. Like the stream, share the stream. It helps out a lot, grows that engagement. Can follow me on X. It's just Andrew Gosser, AndrewGasser. And the number today, if you want to be on the show, is 601-879-0002. The text line is open at 601-879-5060. And our mission here at the Andrew Gosser Show is standard. We are here to equip the saints. Who are the saints? Y'all are the saints, most definitely. And this just keeps hitting harder and harder the more I read it. First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And that's what we're trying to do every day here at the Andrew Gosser Show. Always trying to bring a little bit of a biblical worldview. And there's two stories that really caught my attention. And one comes from Talking Points memo, and don't agree with him very often, but this is pretty good. The Trump DOJ has utterly collapsed, and it ain't pretty. And this goes on to talk about the destruction of the DOJ edition. And they're complaining that DOJ attorneys are completely swamped when it comes to immigration cases. And there's a pull quote here that I take very seriously, and it's a quote from one of the attorneys. I wish you would just hold me in contempt of court so I can go home for 24 hours and get some sleep. The system sucks. This job sucks. I'm trying with every breath I have to get you what you need. Well, you don't want to be held in contempt of court. That always sucks. It's never a good thing. And you know what? Sometimes the job does suck. Sometimes it does suck launching F-14s off the bow of an aircraft carrier in the Arctic Circle. It's flipping cold. You sit there and you run in the jet blast, get behind an A6. That was the best when they were at idle. That had the least amount of thrust coming out the back, and you could sit there and warm up. But then as soon as you get out of that blast, you're cold again. And what this article goes on to talk about is the overload of cases in Minnesota specifically. They've had 6 liberal attorneys quit the DOJ because they don't want to prosecute immigrants who are here illegally, illegal aliens. We don't even say illegal alien anymore. And there is a big workload. And this is exactly what the Biden administration wanted to do. It's exactly what the Obama administration wanted to do, although they couldn't. But they put the tools in place. And what happens when you have at least 14 million illegal immigrants come into your country in 4 years? Deuteronomy 28 happens is what happens. But we have got a completely demoralized DOJ when it comes to immigration. And the thing is if you're demoralized, leave. Go hire people who wanna do it. And these cases back up, the whole court system, it's the last weapon that the left has is the judicial branch, the court, the judges, and the lawfare. We see it all the time. Judge turns down Trump executive order. Trump appeals court overturns lower court. Trump's executive orders back on, gets appealed to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court upholds the appellate court. And all we're sitting here trying to do is say, hey, you know what? We just got through an ice storm. The lights are on. We're warming back up. Things are good. And the negative of this is that, we are slammed with a lot of immigration cases. The positive is that people are self-identifying really quick who really wants to be there. Oh, if you're a military guy or gal, do you even really want to be here? Because the suck is imminent, and you are going to have to go through it. The suck might be boot camp, the suck might be flight school, the suck might be, uh, A school, trade school, airborne. Maybe you've got a wild hair up your behind and wanna be a ranger or a green beret or something different. Not me. Nope, nope, I just wanted to fly, and by the grace of God, that happened. As Joyce Vance notes, Lee is not a regular assistant U.S. attorney, but a special AUSA, whatever that is. She is re she she is reported to have been working with DHS attorney before being detailed to the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office to help with the flood of immigration cases. And this is what happens, by the way, when you have the federal courts take over the immigration caseload. We have immigration courts and immigration judges that are specifically designed and detailed for this very purpose. And we're not using that. We've completely circumvented it. You heard on the news at the top of the hour, 2 illegal aliens who got arrested, flown out, have to come back to Minnesota. And who's paying for that? We're all paying for that. As I was doing show prep last night, you know, we're on track to deport 2 million illegal aliens, not self-deport, but actually capture and deport 2 million. Obama had almost double that, and the left is losing its mind. And then I get texts saying how disappointed they are in me talking about mass formation psychosis and Operation Mockingbird. I'm just showing you what's happening. Obama put kids in cages and Trump is the bad guy. This is what happens when you don't teach civics in schools. You have 38-year-old women who think that they're Wonder Woman and that they can disobey a lawful order from a police officer, and then they get shot, and then everybody's like, "Oh, what happened to me?" It's the same kind of logic. Who in their right mind takes a kid to a ICE protest? I'm just think I'm gonna put my kid in a stroller in the cold weather and go to a ICE protest, and, oh, by the way, when the tear gas goes off, my kid's gonna get gassed. Is there any parent listening to this that would actually do that? Would any of you take your kids to a ICE protest or any protest? Do you remember the pink hat protest, the women's protest? I can't say the word on the radio, but everybody was wearing their pink hats. And I remember I had, some constituents of mine back in Illinois. She took her 2 daughters, sh and she was good looking, and just went out there with their 2 daughters, 7 and 9, and they were wearing pink hats. And I asked her, I'm like, "What the heck were you doing? Having your daughters wear that?" I'm like, "You're hypersexualizing your girls." "Oh, no, no, no." It's those girls now that are taking their kids to these ICE protests, and then their kids are getting gassed, and they're like, "This didn't happen when I protested." There is no common sense, there's a complete lack of common decency. You don't necessarily have to like the law, and you can go ahead and protest it, but people think it's okay to go ahead and, insert themselves into an arrest. Forget if it was ICE or Border Patrol, what if it was CID or Jackson PD? You gonna inject yourself into that and expect not something to happen? And the biggest part about all of this, it truly is Operation Mockingbird and mass formation psychosis, is how they take pictures of these 2 people who got shot and how they digitally alter their looks. The woman who was shot, she didn't look a thing like the picture that you see everywhere. You're talking butch, nothing. The picture that they show of her, loving wife, beautiful long hair, smile, warm glow, happy in that picture. But what in reality, what were they? Nothing. And most of the people listening to this will be like, "Oh, that's just the way it is." Completely disconnected. That guy Pretty, they lightened his skin tone, gave him more hair on his head, gave him bulkier arms, tightened up his chest, gave him a stronger jawline, and that's the picture that they all use. and we fall for it. They sit there and they get right in these police officers' faces, and they say some of the meanest stuff, vulgar stuff you would never say. Well, I think most of you would never say. And they get away with it, and then they come back the next time thinking that they can get away with it again. I wanna know when are our journalists gonna stop getting away with it? I'm not talking about arresting them or confronting them violently, but just saying, "Hey, I saw that story that you put on the show the other day. How come you said that when this clearly wasn't the case?" I've got another story coming up here about a mainstream media outlet cutting a bunch of people, and it kinda plays into what we're talking about, but the topic isn't necessarily the same, but the same principle applies. It's what happens when you start becoming irrelevant. You get lazier or you get more crazier and crazier. You start acting out, lashing out, turning into something that you never planned to be, and we sit there and we think about where did our country go? And to say that, "Oh, that's in Minnesota, it won't happen here," or "That's in DC, it won't happen here." Oh, it will. I've got the pictures to prove it. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. Guess what? We'll be right back. Oh, yeah. Welcome back to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. And the liberal mainstream media continues to shed jobs, continues to shrink its market share, and it continues to absolutely stink because they can't report the news. They have to give their opinion in the news. And that is exactly what's happening with the liberal bastion that is the Washington Post. And I look at this from a little bit different angle, but I got to get through this. And when I clicked on the story, I was actually shocked by the author and the news source because this is CNN, Brian Stelter of all people. The Washington Post laid off about 1 in 3 employees across the company Wednesday morning, dealing another big blow to a newsroom that has reached a breaking point. And the truth of the matter is that they're not a journalistic organization anymore. They have Trump derangement syndrome, and any chance that they get to say Trump bad, they will. And if they'll never say Trump good, or if they do have to say something good about Trump, they won't mention the administration. They'll just say the statistics say this. But here's what's really interesting: the impacts include dramatically shrinking the Metro desk, which is kind of a shame because there's so much crime that goes on in DC, even though it's been cut by a bunch. Still lots that needs to be reported there. Shutting down almost the entire sports section, and that's what I kinda wanna focus on here for the next minute or 2, because I know there are lots of sports fans out here. There are even LSU fans, w and I'm not saying that I love LSU, but we love LSU fans. There's Braves fans, there's Alabama fans, there's Ole Miss fans. Oh, there's a lot of Ole Miss fans. There's even some Mississippi State fans. Go Dogs. But where do you go to get your sports news? Do you go to a newspaper anymore? Or do you go to a blog? Is there a podcast you go to? I mean, I can remember growing up in the '80s and the '90s and checking the paper daily to see where the Cubs were in the standings. I always had to look towards the bottom because the Cubs absolutely stunk back then. Every once in a while, we have a good year. '84 was a good year. Ryan Spanberg, if you know, you know. But the sports section, the entire sports section is basically kaput. And I'm just using myself as an example. I don't really follow too many American sports, but I do follow soccer, football, and I get all my information from online content creators and X. And this just goes to show you that the way that we consume media, the way that information is conveyed is moving away from print and moving to a digital format, which in some ways is good, in some ways is bad. I always like the print. And like when we're doing Founding Fathers Friday, which is gonna be a good one this Friday. It's gonna be a really good one. Kinda let out a secret of whose it's gonna be. But I always like to have the paper in front of me. Like books, when I read books, I don't like e-readers. I've got a Kindle, a nice one, but I haven't used it in years. I'd rather have the book in front of me. I like to be able to underline things. Yeah, in as few books as I read every year, which is about 10, the sweet bee, you wanna talk about a voracious reader. She's reading 12, 13 books a month, ladies and gentlemen, a month. She is a voracious reader, incredibly smart woman, smartest person I know. Well, actually, she's the 2nd smartest person I know, but one I have the most contact with by far. Other places that this news organization is closing, it's closing the book section of all things. When's the last time if you are a parent, seriously, sit down with your child tonight and say, "Son, daughter, what is the last book you read from cover to cover? We wanna know." I I can't tell you the last time I've sat down and asked my daughter the last book she read. I know that she's always in her studying her books for school, but when's the last time she actually read something for enjoyment? I can't say that. Can you? Just think about it. We had papers back in the day that told you what books to go read. They're canceling the Daily Reports podcast and other parts of the newspaper. And of course, this argument goes into how Bezos is bad for media. I mean, if you think about Jeff Bezos, owner of Amazon, uh, the rocket company, New Shepard, I think, or New Origins is the name of his rocket company, and they are successful. They've had 2 launches of their New Glenn rocket, which has been pretty good. It's nothing compared to what SpaceX is doing, but hey, the competition is good. So it wasn't for a lack of money, it's just from a lack of readership and of lack of having really good content. I'm not gonna sit here and spare you all with Brian Stelter's dribble and drab, but it's just another example of the old media dying off, whether that be the newspapers or the TV stations or even some of the digital stuff. It's all going away. But speaking of rockets, NASA delays Artemis 2 moon launch after issues during rehearsal. And this one was sent to me by a listener, and we often debate the pros and cons of NASA. And I feel that this is something that I'm really well knowledgeable about. I've been around since Artemis was called the Constellation System, which then morphed into the Space Launch System, which then morphed into the Artemis system. This is the Artemis 2 launch. When we pitched this back in 2006, back in the day, it was supposed to be a follow-on to the space shuttle using shuttle technology so that it could quickly be turned around and fly often. And it was supposed to be cheap. It was never supposed to be reusable, but we were gonna reuse a lot of the tooling and the legacy infrastructure from the space shuttle at NASA. And I got in so much trouble for this. Oh my gosh. I remember saying back in 2014, the best thing that could happen to Kennedy Space Center is to blow the vehicle assembly building off its pad and just clean slate. Oh my gosh. I almost got kicked out of the industry for it. But it's true. It's only flown once. This is gonna be the first time it's flying humans, and Godspeed to them. We're all praying for success. But we're going around the moon. We're not going on the moon. We're not necessarily going back to the moon. Is it words? Is it semantics? Perhaps. Maybe not. I don't think it is. If I say I'm going to Hawaii, you're expecting me to go to Hawaii and sit down and put my foot on the ground. If I'm flying a mission in an AWACS and I'm flying to Hawaii, I might not necessarily land. I'm flying over Hawaii. I'm flying around Hawaii. Our AOR is over Hawaii. Anyways, it's been delayed. NASA said on Tuesday that it was delaying its mission to send 4 astronauts on a journey around the moon after issues arose during a critical test of its rocket. It's the wet dress rehearsal. That's where they load up all the liquid oxygen, all the liquid hydrogen, put the astronauts in there. They load it all up and pretend to count down until they light the SRBs, which stands for solid rocket boosters, or SRMs, I think they call them now, solid rocket motors. We got to change the terminology, save a couple billion there. Originally, this was supposed to cost about $600 million a mission. Right now, they're estimating that if we do 5 missions, it's gonna be roughly $20 billion for each mission. When you juxtapose that to what SpaceX is doing with Elon Musk, you're talking maybe $100 million a mission. Now, that's still a lot of money, but do you see how the private sectors will always outperform the government sector once it learns the basics of what it needs to do? NASA's not the only example of this. You can also look in our military-industrial complex where Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman are starting to lose contracts over drones and ships because it can't keep up. We've got this old bulky system that just keeps chugging and chugging along. We never get rid of anything. It just adds on, kinda like our local governments too, right? Can't we say that? When's the last time we've had I mean, that would be a great bill for next year. Maybe we can sit down and talk with a couple of the state reps and senators. "Hey, can we go through the Mississippi Code and just cut out 1,000 lines of law?" Not necessarily 1,000 different laws, although that we probably could. What could we do? We could even have AI help us with that. I bet you AI is a really powerful tool to go ahead and do that. NASA was forced to end the test with around 5 minutes and 15 seconds remaining in the simulated launch countdown. Shortly after 2 a.m. on Tuesday, man, I'm glad I didn't stay up to watch that. It would forego February's launch window, so now it's going to be pushed back to March 9th, from March 6th to March 9th, with additional dates in April if needed. The big takeaway is that we got a chance for the rocket to talk to us, and it did just that, said John Honeycutt, the Artemis II mission management team chair. There are I'm telling you this, this is from intimate knowledge with the space shuttle program. There is so much going on that rocket. You know, simplification, has not had the chance to really go into that rocket. They're still using a lot of old systems. I mean, some of it designed in the '70s and the early '80s, and we're using it in 2026. We gotta do better. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show on 103.9 WYAB. Oh, yeah. Welcome back to the Andrew Gosser Show. All sorts of stuff going off over in the Arabian Peninsula. Iran is trying to flex its might. And yesterday, the U.S. shot down an Iranian drone. And this was just a tester, just to see how quickly the United States would react to this. And then I'm getting this from the Gateway Pundit. The U.S. shoots down Iranian drone after encounter near USS Abraham Lincoln. That is scary as a sailor. And yes, I am a retired sailor, but once a sailor, always a sailor. Um, when people start violating the area around a U.S. aircraft carrier, that's going to get a lot of attention. That's a really big deal. I won't say how big of a deal, but you can guess. And with this, it was a Marine Corps F-35C, which is a really advanced fighter. And the thing that I really appreciate about the F-35 is it is not a master of anything. It's a jack of all trades. And for very specialized missions like air-to-air intercept, we have the F-22 and the onboarding of the F-47. If we've got to do some serious bombing, we've got the B-1, the B-52, the B-2, and coming on board is the B-21. The F the Associated Press is so terrible. Breaking, the U.S. military says it shot down an Iranian drone with a F-35 fighter jet, and then it shows a picture of a F-18 Hornet. That's just the little shit stuff that the shift in the way that they go ahead and they push news to us, right? They say it's a F-35, and then they show it's a F-A-18 Hornet. They're terrible. The Associated propaganda, terrible. According to a report from CNN, an unmanned aircraft was intercepted hours before another encounter with 2 Iranian gunboats. So not only did they go after a drone, it appears that they had an encounter with 2 Iranian gunboats. What happened with that encounter? Was it just a show of force, or did something else actually happen? The U.S. spokesman said that the drone ignored aircraft or ignored efforts by American forces to de-escalate. And Captain Tom Hawkins, a U.S. CENTCOM spokesman, said the Iranian drone continued to fly towards the ship. Send out the Marines. Man, I wonder what the Marine squadron had to do to get that deal. I mean, you think that you had F-18s, Navy F-35s. I mean, you had a whole host of people who want to go shoot that thing down. Right place, right time. What I don't see here is what they used to shoot it down with. Was it a Sidewinder missile? Was it an AMRAAM? Was it the gun? Doesn't say. But 2 hours after we shoot down this drone, 2 gunboats operated by Iranians, IRGC, Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, approached the U.S. flag tanker, and they were told to turn around, and they did. And this is where Brother Rick comes in. And Rick and I agree on a lot of stuff, but there's stuff that we don't agree on too. And again, it's not like we're throwing daggers at each other and getting upset. We can have a debate and serious disagreement without losing our minds and calling, oh, this person's a bad Republican or Andy's a bad Republican. It's not like that at all. But he asks a real question, and this is something that you should all ask too. If you're small business owners, you are always thinking about the logistics, the supply chain. Sun Tzu in The Art of War definitely talked about it. It's one of the most important things that we can do. So how is America going to resupply its weapons when China holds 90% plus of the rare earth minerals? Things like the F-35 have over 1,000 pounds of rare earth minerals in each unit. We refine 0 rare earth minerals here at home. They are needed for guidance systems, night vision, radar. Meanwhile, all of our equipment is in Ukraine and Israel. So let me answer the first part, or the second part first, Brother Rick, where you say, meanwhile, all of our equipment is in Ukraine and Israel. I've said this in the past, and I'll say this again. What you're seeing happen in Israel and Ukraine with respect to a lot of our weapons, especially the Ukraine more than Israel, is we're just dumping stuff that we no longer use because we've got better stuff and we've got to sell it. We'll sell it to Europe, who will sell it to Ukraine. We'll sell some stuff to Israel, especially a lot of our our air defense systems, Patriots, Dads, stuff like that. There's always upgrades, and we've got to get rid of them somehow. And that's just the bottom line of what happens. We sell it to our allies, and it's just how it works. And I'm not saying it's right, but that's how it works. But then I go to Fox News 11, and I don't know where this Fox station is out of. Washington. The Trump administration is expected to reveal its plan to build a U.S. strategic reserve of critical minerals on Wednesday, which are essential for technologies like smartphones, electric vehicles, jet engines, renewable energy, and defense hardware. So, Brother Rick, you are on the cutting edge of societal evolution, much like most of this audience is. There's a few out there that are catching up. There's a few who don't wanna be on the cutting edge of societal evolution, but you're welcome to listen along too. We'll get you there. It's a $12 billion program called Project Vault, and it's being led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And this is gonna have over 50 nations participating in this, and this is what the United States needs to do, by the way. We need to start meeting on this and having, real conversations about what's happening with our rare earth metals, because it's true that right now China could literally, as much as we're cutting off China's supply of oil with taking out Venezuela and not allowing Venezuela to launder sanctioned oil from Iran and Russia, they can do the same thing to us with rare earth minerals. They just can. But the thing about it is that we do have President Trump, who's not asleep at the wheel, who doesn't need an auto pen. And this is so funny. You know, the United States is gonna cut a deal for Greenland, and NATO has already once tried to send a mission to NATO with, I believe, a total of 37 soldiers to defend Greenland from the Imperial Americans, the colonists. This is coming from Ground News. NATO says planning is underway for a new Arctic mission amid Greenland tensions. NATO is planning underway for a new mission in the strategically important Arctic region of Greenland. And man, I hate using Reuters. I really do, but we'll use them just for the sake of the argument. NATO has started shipping military planning for Arctic Century mission, spokesperson said. Repeated remarks by President Trump said that he wants to acquire Greenland, accusing European allies of failing to properly secure the large Arctic island. And Trump is true on that. But what people don't realize about Greenland, and probably most people in this listening audience get it, but many do not, is that there is a lot of rare earth minerals in Greenland. There's actually a lot of rare earth minerals in the United States. It's just the Environmental Protection Agency won't allow us to go get it. They block it all the time. Rick's out there chiming back in. I want to make sure that I get it. He says he agrees with what I'm saying, but to sell that older stuff, but then again, the newer stuff requires even more rare earth that we can't get. We can get it, brother. The question is do we have the infrastructure in place to get it? There are craters, meteoroid craters in the United States where we know that there's lots of rare earth minerals, but we don't go after it because we're protecting it like it's some type of national treasure or landmark. We get all of our enriched nuclear material from Russia. So true. When I was back doing the NASA stuff, the private space stuff, we tried to get them to restart producing our own plutonium for space missions, reconnaissance missions out to Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and the planet. I'll still call Pluto a planet. I know they say it's a planetoid, but I'm calling it a planet. My friend Alan Stern says it's a planet. It's a planet. And we haven't done that. And the thing about it is that you need a special type of reactor to go ahead and produce that kind of stuff. The new reactors that they're building now don't even produce the kind of stuff we need to go ahead to send on long missions into space. So we are cutting it close on both ends of the sphere. But, when you've got President Trump working with 50 other countries and Senator Marco Rubio, by the way, um, his stock inside the Republican Party has absolutely skyrocketed along with JD Vance. I think both of those guys are good dudes. Um, I have confidence that the United States is going in the right direction when it comes to our rare earth minerals. I honestly, I look at our cell phones. My wife and I were just discussing it the other night. We got this new iOS update, and it makes it worse. I don't know if you guys like the new iOS update, but it's absolutely terrible. Can't stand it. But brother Rick, to answer your question, the Americans are doing something about it. NATO is doing something about it. But I read this whole article from Reuters, and all it talks about is planning is underway for a NATO enhanced vigilant activity named Arctic Sentry. And he declined to give any additional details on the planning, but said it's only begun. I can tell you, having worked with NATO allies and stuff, it's not like working with an indigenous US Air Force or US Navy or even a joint US military operation. The planning is so much quicker. Love NATO, love our allies. There's some allies I love more than others, but I won't mention them on the radio. But the one thing that they are is slow. And NATO, 95% of NATO funding comes from where? Uncle Sam. It comes from right here in Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, all the states and the territories. NATO can't defend itself without us. So when NATO says that they're getting involved, it's kind of like just sitting there looking at it, going to Davos and listening to some third world country dictator talk about how great they are. They're just blowing smoke up everybody's rear end. And, we're out there doing it. So I'm excited for that. That'll mean more American jobs, a bigger economy. Hopefully we do go more nuclear and we start building these smaller nuclear reactors that don't require the giant cooling towers like we're all used to, and build on the fear that was given to us back in the 1980s with 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show on 103.9. We will be right back.
when I declared an investment in knowledge pays the best interest.
And we are back at the Andrew Gosser Show. A couple of quick stories as we wrap it up for the day, Wednesday. This is always interesting to me because we're supposed to be a nation of immigrants and we're supposed to accept everybody. But it's okay for other nations to want to get rid of their immigrants, even if they're there legally. Case in point, Lebanon. Lebanon wants majority of 1 million Syrian refugees to return home this year. As you know, Syria is an Islamic hellhole. Literally, the Sunnis and the Shias are just going after each other left and right. And some days you say, "Yeah, you win," and then Al Qaeda moves in, and then we're like, "Ooh, bad," and then the other side moves in, and they're just fighting each other. And they're spilling over into Lebanon. They're spilling over into Turkey. They're spilling over into Iraq. They're spilling over into Israel. Get them the heck out. This is coming from the National. Lebanon wants to help the majority of Syrian refugees return home this year following the fall of the Assad regime, the country's social affairs minister said. Haneen Saeed said the government was committed to supporting the families with financial and other incentives, but said we can't carry this burden any longer. Isn't that true about the United States of America? We're carrying this burden, and we know we are. And, it's a burden that we truly enjoy. It's as Americans, give us the tough stuff to do. We'll do it. We're strong. But just like the Lebanese, it's time for all these people from all these other countries to get out of our country. We need time to rebuild our infrastructure. We need time to reground ourselves in our ideals and our ideologies, our culture that made us who we are. Last thing I want to say is if you are sick and tired of politics, if you've just had enough, there is a cure, and it's 100% work. It works 100% of the time. You know what it's called? Dogs. Whenever I get all fired up over work and I'm sitting here reading stuff, I just go out in my backyard. There's Delilah. There's Phoebe. There's Ezekiel. There's Ghostface Killer. And about 50 lambs running around. And I just decompress with my dogs, come up, and they sashay on up to me. They're so grateful and thankful. They don't give you any lip. They don't disagree with you. So if you're all upset, go get a dog. Take care, everybody. Be blessed.